Chapter 26, The Present. It's been 2 weeks since we were all in the newspapers and received the Queen's letter, and in lots of ways, things feel just like they did before. Mum doesn't walk me to the bus stop anymore, and strangers have stopped staring at us with funny looks on their faces, and I'm still hoping to win first prize for my photosynthesis plant, even though Ahmed's plant is growing faster than anyone else's. He's teaching me some words in Kurdish like grow more and grow up and I love you lots, and I think it's working. But in lots of other ways, things aren't normal at all. Aunt Christina comes round much more often, and she buys me presents too. I think she likes us now because we're in the newspapers. I still don't like her. Whenever she comes, I ignore her and make Uncle Lenny play Scrabble with me and Mum like he used to. Mr. and Mrs. Rashid from the floor below have invited Mum and me for dinner this week, which means Mum might have a new best friend. And next week I'll be going with Tom and Josie and Michael and Ahmed to Buckingham Palace to have tea with the Queen. Sometimes I get so excited thinking about it that I have to jump up and down just as high as I can until my insides feel calmer. I think they must know that things can never be the same again after you've had tea with an actual Queen. Mum asked me what I'd like to take as a present for the Queen, and I thought about it for 3 hours. In the end, I decided that as she doesn't really need anything, and I can't afford to buy her real diamonds or a ruby, I would buy her a pomegranate from the man with the royal heart, because I think the next best thing to wearing lots of jewels must be to eat lots of little ones instead. The other thing that's changing is that I turned 10 today. When I woke up extra early this morning, I found the birthday card on the kitchen table. The birthday card is a very old card. It was the last one Dad gave to me before he died. And every year Mum puts it out so that he can be there to greet me when I wake up, just like he used to when he was alive. It doesn't say much inside, just, to my pumpkin, happy birthday. Try not to grow up too fast. Love, Dad, kiss. I'm glad Mum had to leave for work early because seeing the card always makes me want to sit down and cry. So I did. And then I went to my room and played one of Dad's favourite songs on his old record player. That made me feel better too. Sometimes all you really need is somewhere to cry without anyone ever knowing. I didn't remind anyone it was my birthday because I wasn't having a party and I didn't have anything to take into my class with me. Josie brings in a big cake on her birthday, and Michael's mum always hands out goodie bags to everyone. But Mum doesn't have time to bake, and goodie bags are expensive. That's why it's easier to pretend that I don't have a birthday at all. I met Tom and Josie and Michael by the bus stop as usual, and when they didn't say anything about my birthday, I felt sad and glad at the same time. I was afraid Mrs. Khan might say something, but she didn't. My Uncle Lenny usually sends me something in the post, so I would probably get home to find a card with some extra pocket money or chocolate in it, like I did last year. If I did, that would be nice. At afternoon break, Josie and Tom and Michael and Ahmed and me talked about what we were going to wear to Buckingham Palace next week. Josie's mum was going to buy her a new dress and a new pair of football trainers. Michael was wearing a suit with a bow tie. Tom said he had a purple suit his uncle had made him wear to a wedding in San Francisco, but which might not fit anymore. And Ahmed said his foster mum was going to buy him something at the weekend, and that he would also take his rucksack. "You can't take your rucksack with you," said Josie. "It's old and ripped, and it's got a hole in the front pocket. The Queen might not even let it inside the palace." "But important," said Ahmed, looking panicked. My dad gave for me for birthday before war, and I carry from Syria. So next time I tell him it is seen by Queen." Oh, said Josie, looking sorry that she said anything. "Then you have to take it," I said. "The Queen will want to see it." "Yeah," said Tom, "and your dad will love it." Ahmed smiled and said, "I know you two understand." The bell for last period began to ring, but as we all headed back to class, we met Miss Hempsey in the corridor outside. She was clasping her hands together, and her eyes looked red, As soon as she saw us, she ran over and, whispering something into Ahmed's ear, took him by the hand and quickly led him away. "Where is she taking him?" asked Josie, as Ahmed looked over his shoulder with a confused look on his face. None of us could think of an answer, so we made our way into class. After we had all got out our spelling books and spent 10 minutes learning the meaning and spelling of 3 new words, possession, depression, and objection, there was a light knock on the door. We all looked around to see who it was. After a few seconds, Miss Hempsey's head popped round the door and, after giving Mrs. Khan a thumbs up, disappeared again. Mrs. Khan smiled and, clapping her hands, said, "Right, everyone, close your books, please. I have a very important announcement to make." We all fell quiet and waited for an explanation about what was going on and where Ahmed was. "Today is a very special day," said Mrs. Khan, "and we have a few very special guests to help us celebrate." Everyone turned around to see if there was anyone at the door, but there was no one there yet. "Eyes to the front, please," ordered Mrs. Khan. "Now, before our guests arrive, I want you all to promise me that you'll be on your very best behaviour." Everyone shouted, "We promise, Mrs. Khan," wondering who the guests would be. "Do you think it's the Queen?" whispered Josie. "Maybe it's the Queen's guards again," whispered Tom. But they were both wrong, because it was my mum, carrying a cake with candles on it, and behind her was Mrs. Sanders, and Ahmed's foster mum, and Miss Hempsey, and the woman who had been at the interview, and who Michael had said was Ahmed's caseworker, and another woman we'd never seen before, who was walking with her hand on Ahmed's shoulder. I could tell Ahmed was happy, because he was smiling, but his eyes looked wet and a little red too, just like Miss Hempsey's had in the corridor. And within a few seconds, the whole class was singing "Happy Birthday" to me, just as loudly as they could. After Mum helped me blow out the candles, Ahmed, Miss Hempsey, and the woman who still had her hand on his shoulder stood at the front of the class with Mrs. Khan. "Quieten down, please, everyone," called out Mrs. Khan. "We'll cut the cake in just a few minutes, but first, I want everyone to say good afternoon to our extra special guest, Miss Duncan." The woman standing beside Ahmed stepped forward as everyone shouted out, "Good afternoon, Miss Duncan." She was wearing a bright blue suit and had short grey hair and a green diamond ring. "Now, Miss Duncan has come here today from very far away because she has some important news to share with us all," said Mrs. Khan. "Over to you, Miss Duncan." Miss Duncan nodded and looked straight at me with a smile before looking around at everyone. "Good afternoon, everyone. I'm from the Home Office, which is the government department that controls who comes in and out of our country." "Like the police?" called out Dean. "Not like the police," smiled Miss Duncan. She was waiting for more questions, but no one else said anything. Everyone was deathly silent now, and I could feel my whole chest beating so hard that it felt like someone was playing drums inside my tummy. Miss Duncan carried on. "Today, I had the pleasure of bringing Ahmed some special news, and he has very kindly said that he would like to share it with all of you. Ahmed?" She held out a plain white envelope that had no address on it and offered it to him, but Ahmed didn't take it and whispered something to Miss Hempsey instead. Miss Hempsey frowned at first, but then, laughing and crying all at once, gestured at me to come up. He would like his best friend to read it to everyone, she explained. For a moment I couldn't move. Then Josie gave me a kick under the table that made me stand up and slowly walk over to where Ahmed was standing. Miss Duncan waited until I was standing in front of her and, holding out the envelope to me, said, "A very happy birthday, Alexa, from all of us. Thanks to you and to Josie, Michael and Tom, of course. There have been thousands of people writing in and signing petitions and calling our offices just to ask how they could help Ahmed and lots of other refugee children like him. And because of that, well, here you go." Ahmed nodded and added, "Happy birthday, best friend." I opened my mouth, but I think all my words must have disappeared and my brain had stopped working. because I couldn't really think any thoughts anymore. Ahmed tapped the envelope in my hand and said, "You read it. For me." I tried to take the piece of paper out of the envelope, but there were so many eyes staring at me, and Ahmed's eyes looked so big that my fingers got nervous, and I started to shake. "Here, darling." "Let me help you," whispered my mum, as she jumped up and quickly took out the folded piece of paper that lay inside. Opening it up, she held me close as we read it out together. It said, "Status, family investigation summary, Ahmed Sakal, age 9, father, Mohammed Sakal, aged 43, profession, professor of engineering, country of origin, Syria, status, located, Calais refugee camp, France, mother, Samira Sakal, age 45, profession journalist, country of origin, Syria, status, located, medical facility, Surik, Turkey, sister, Syra Sakal, age 3, status, deceased, Med crossing. HO outcome, granted permanent asylum in the UK. Reunification of family, imminent. I looked up at Mum, and then at Ahmed, and then back at Mum again. "What's asylum mean?" My mum smiled, but her eyes were watery too. "It means they can come and live here, darling. Ahmed's mum and dad are coming to the UK. They've been found." I looked up at Ahmed, who was nodding excitedly, and then I looked up at Josie and Tom and Michael, who were all staring back at me with their mouths open, and then I looked at Mrs. Khan, who was saying a prayer, and Miss Hempsey, who was crying so much that she had grabbed Mrs. Sanders and was making her go red in the face. And suddenly Michael jumped up and shouted, "We did it!" And the whole class started cheering and whooping and jumping and clapping all at once. I know that afternoon was one of the best afternoons I will ever have, not because it was my birthday, but because it was an end to one of the best adventures a brand new 10-year-old could ever have, and the beginning of a whole set of new adventures that I bet even Tintin never had. And it was all thanks to a boy who came and sat at the back of the class, who let me be his friend.